was cold and unnaturally still. Fog had settled over the forest, hanging low between the trees like a heavy pall. From the second-story window of the cabin, the woods seemed to disappear into it. Beyond the nearest line of trees, there was nothing but darkness. Something felt wrong. Anara had tried several times to tell her parents, but no one seemed interested in listening to a 10-year-old at an adult New Year's Eve party. "Honey, why don't you get into your pajamas?" her mother said softly. "I'll be up soon to tuck you in." Anara lowered her head and walked toward the old wooden staircase. The steps creaked beneath her feet as she climbed. New Year's parties weren't much fun when you were a kid, especially when most of the adults downstairs were becoming louder and more obnoxious by the hour. There were other children at the cabin at least. Unfortunately, one of them was Ash. He was her cousin, a year younger than her, and according to Anara, hopelessly nerdy. He preferred playing with toy dinosaurs and collecting Pokemon cards over doing practically anything interesting. Anara was different. She loved books, crafts, and figuring things out. The two were sharing an upstairs bedroom with the twins, Danny and Lila. At only 8 years old, they were already asleep in their bunks on the opposite side of the room. Ash sat cross-legged on the rug in the middle of the floor, surrounded by toys. He looked up as Anara stomped into the room. She ignored him and walked directly to the large bay window overlooking the forest. "What's wrong with you?" Ash asked. "You wouldn't understand." "Just tell me, Anara." Ash stood and crossed his arms. "None of the adults listen to me, not even my mom." "That's because they're all getting wasted," Ash replied matter-of-factly. Anara glanced at him. "You wouldn't understand, Ash." "You don't have to be so mean, Anara." Okay, Ash. Stop saying my name like that." "I can't help it," she smirked. "You were named after burnt remains." "I was actually named after a great Pokemon trainer." Anara suddenly turned back toward the window. Her smile disappeared. "Did you hear that?" Ash frowned. "Hear what?" Anara stared into the fog. Then Ash rolled his eyes. "At least I wasn't named after a prostitute." Anara spun around. "What?" "I was not. My name means shining or ray of light." "Where to?" "I heard Uncle Frank talking about it." "About what?" "He said you were named after some TV show with Western space cowboys, and there was a prostitute named Anara." "Liar." "I heard him." "You're such an idiot." The argument stopped instantly. The entire cabin began to shake. The floor trembled beneath their feet. The window rattled violently in its frame. Something fell downstairs, followed by shouting as the adults reacted to the sudden movement. Ash stumbled sideways. Anara grabbed the edge of the window seat, and then, almost as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. Both children stared at one another. A moment later, footsteps hurried up the staircase. The bedroom door opened. Anara's mother stood in the doorway. "Are you all okay?" "Mom." Anara ran toward her, and her mother wrapped her in a hug. "I told you something was wrong." "It was just a small earthquake, honey." Her mother bent down and kissed her forehead. "I wasn't scared at all, Aunt Lainey," Ash announced. He gave Anara a smug little smile. She glared at him. "Mom, there was something out in the woods." Her mother sighed. "Shh. You two need to get ready for bed, and no more fighting. I could hear both of you shouting from downstairs." Anara's stomach sank. Again, no one believed her. Once Aunt Lanny left and closed the door behind her, Ash stood quietly for several seconds. Then he walked toward the window. He stopped beside Inara. "You gonna tell me now?" "There's something in the forest." Ash peered through the glass. Fog covered the ground beneath them, swirling between the trees. "What?" "I saw something moving." Ash leaned closer and cupped his hands around his eyes. All he could see was fog, trees, darkness. Then Inara grabbed his arm. "There!" Ash looked. His entire body stiffened. Something pale moved between the trees, then another, and another. Ash jumped backward from the window. Goosebumps covered his arms. "You saw it too?" Inara whispered. Ash didn't answer. Instead, he rushed toward his backpack. "What are you doing?" "Getting a better look." He dug through the bag and pulled out a pair of binoculars. Ash hurried back to the bay window and climbed onto the cushions beside her. His breathing became heavier as he lifted the binoculars to his eyes. For several seconds, he said nothing. His heart pounded. Because now he could see them clearly. Gray, slender, far too tall. Figures descending through the fog into the forest. Not walking down the hill, descending, as though they had dropped from the sky. Ash slowly lowered the binoculars. "I've seen them near the tree line too," Inara whispered. "I think they're getting closer. We need to tell everyone." "They won't listen." "They'll listen to both of us." They didn't even believe the earthquake was anything. Ash stared back outside. Another gray figure slipped between the trees. Closer this time. "We need to get ready then." Inara looked at him. "Get ready? What are we supposed to do?" "We gotta be ready to fight them." "With what?" "Did you see how tall they were?" Ash swallowed. "Really tall." They stared at each other. "Maybe we can hide." Inara looked toward the sleeping twins. "We should wake Danny and Lila. They shouldn't be asleep if those things get inside." "You're right. We should be ready to run, too." Together, they woke the twins. Rather than tell them what was really happening, Inara said they were playing a game. A secret game. They needed shoes. They needed coats. And if they followed all the rules, there would be candy afterward. That caught their attention. "You two have to do whatever we say," Inara whispered as she helped Lila pull on her boots. "If you don't listen, the gray creatures get you. And if they get you, the game's over." Danny's eyes widened. "What gray creatures?" "They're outside." Ash nodded. "They're trying to get into the house." Unfortunately, Danny and Lila decided that wasn't a very fun game. Instead of hiding, they ran downstairs screaming. Within minutes, Inara's mother was back. She was not happy. She accused Inara and Ash of deliberately frightening the twins and told them they were to remain in the bedroom the rest of the night. Danny and Lila were moved to another room. The door closed again. Inara sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Ash stood at the window. He wanted to cry too. He didn't. Instead, he lifted the binoculars. His face went pale. "They're through the clearing." Inara wiped her eyes. "What?" "They're almost by the cars." She hurried toward the window. Ash stepped away from it. "I have an idea." His eyes moved around the room. "They can't get us if we hide really well." "Ash, they came from the sky. Where are we supposed to hide?" Inara stopped. She looked toward the ceiling, then toward the floor. "Well, they came in the dark, in the fog. So, maybe they don't like light." Ash considered it. "You have any flashlights?" "I have one." "There are more in the hall closet. Candles, too. Find as many as you can." Ash quietly opened the bedroom door and slipped into the hallway. was gone, and Nora began clearing everything from the top of a large dresser. He returned several minutes later carrying a bag. "What are you doing?" "Help me move this." "Where?" She pointed toward the rug. "There, slowly. We can't let our parents hear us." "Why?" "There's an attic door above it." Ash looked up. Then he smiled. "Perfect." He shoved the rug aside, and together they pushed the dresser beneath the small attic opening. Slowly, carefully, trying desperately not to make a sound, the dresser had barely reached its place when both children froze. Thump. Anara looked at Ash. He looked at her. Neither spoke. A few seconds passed. Thump. This time it came from directly above them. Something was on the roof. "I think they're up there," Anara whispered. Ash's face went white. "Hurry." Anara climbed onto the dresser and pushed against the attic door. It lifted. Cold darkness waited above her. "We need the lights." "I'll hand them to you." Ash grabbed the bag. "Ladies first." "Just hurry." Anara pulled herself into the attic. Ash tossed the bag up to her, and she immediately began switching on the flashlights. One, two, three. Small circles of white light filled the darkness. Ash put one foot onto the dresser. Then something screeched outside. Both children froze. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a word. It was high and distorted, almost mechanical. Another screech answered from somewhere else, then another, as if they were communicating. "Ash," Anara whispered. He didn't move. "Ash, hurry, get up here." He stood beneath her, staring toward the window. "What are you doing?" "The dresser." "What?" "I gotta push it back." "No." "They'll see it. They'll know where you went." "Don't leave me here, Ash." Ash grabbed the dresser. Anara, close the door. "No." "Close it." He pushed with all his strength. The dresser scraped loudly across the wooden floor. There was no point to being quiet anymore. The screeching outside grew louder. Ash moved the dresser away from the attic opening. Then he grabbed a wooden baseball bat from beside the bed. He stood facing the window. "Anara, close it. They'll find you if you don't." Her eyes filled with tears. "Ash, do it." Slowly, Anara pulled the attic door above the opening. She left the smallest gap, just enough to see him. Ash stood alone beneath her, gripping the bat with both hands. Then came the scratching, across the roof, down the walls, across the windows. The noises multiplied until the entire cabin seemed surrounded by them. Someone screamed downstairs. Then every window in the cabin exploded inward. Glass flew across the room. Ash threw an arm over his face. From downstairs came more screams, shouting, breaking glass, and then every light in the cabin went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Anara pressed both hands over her mouth. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. Below her, Ash slowly raised his head. Tiny cuts covered his face. Fragments of glass glittered around him. Then a strange glow filled the bedroom. It had no source. It simply appeared. Ash stood in the center of it. He looked up. His eyes found the tiny opening in the attic. They found Anara. She would remember the fear in them for the rest of her life. A thin crack appeared across Ash's cheek. Anara stared. Another crack formed along his forehead. Then another. They spread across his skin like fractures, running through a porcelain doll. Ash Ash's hands. The cracks began glowing red. His mouth opened, then the red became flame. For one horrible moment, Ash burned from inside the cracks in his own skin, and then darkness. The gray glow vanished. The screeching stopped. The scratching stopped. The thumps above her disappeared. Everything became silent. Anara remained hidden. She didn't know for how long. Minutes, maybe hours. Eventually, she reached for one of the flashlights. Her hands were trembling so badly that the beam shook as she pointed it through the opening. Ash. Nothing answered. Ash. Nothing answered. She moved the light across the floor, the broken glass, the overturned toys. Then the beam stopped. The wooden bat lay where Ash had been standing. Beside it was a pile of ashes. Anara stayed in the attic until she could no longer hear anything moving. Eventually, she forced herself down. The cabin was freezing. Wind moved through the empty window frames, carrying the fog inside. Her breath clouded in front of her face. Mom. No answer. She stepped into the hallway. Dad. Nothing. Room by room she searched. Room by room she searched. It was all the same. Broken windows, glass, silence, ashes. Her parents were gone. The twins were gone. Every aunt, uncle, cousin, and family friend who had been celebrating downstairs was gone. All that remained were piles of ashes. When the sun finally rose over the forest, strange footprints could be seen outside the cabin. They began between the trees, crossed through the clearing, past the cars, and ended at the house. No prints ever led away. Anara never saw her family again. For years afterward, people told stories about the family who vanished from a secluded cabin on New Year's Eve. Anara never told anyone what she had seen. She already knew they wouldn't believe her. As she grew older, the nightmares never stopped. Again and again, she saw Ash standing beneath that attic door. She saw his frightened eyes turn black. She watched the cracks spread across his face. And every time she woke, she remembered one thing. Everyone had called Ash a frightened little boy, but Anara knew better. Ash had saved